Right, good evening, everybody. I think we're about to get started. So thank you. It's really great, once again, to see this room so full. I'm Liz Lempert. I'm Liz Lempert. I'm the mayor, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm joined here tonight by, I think, almost every member of Princeton Council. Council President Jenny Kremiller is here, Tim Quinn, Dwayne Williamson, Eve Niedergang, David Cohen. Did I forget anybody who's not here? So council is here, and we are committed to this program, just as I know all of you being here tonight, you're committed to it too. This has been a really difficult time for everybody who's been a part of this. I know I feel it. I know my daughter, who was 9 when we signed up for this program, just cannot, we have like a pile of stuff on our kitchen counter because we can't bear to throw it away. So the good news tonight that we're going to be talking about in more detail in a little bit is that this pause has actually potentially opened up an opportunity to make this program so much better than it was before. Potentially a really transformational opportunity that I'm really excited about, but I want to be cautiously excited about because we still need to make sure that we're doing our due diligence before we jump into something. But there is something very exciting we're going to be unveiling in a minute, and we do want to get your feedback about it. I need my little cheat sheet up there. All right. Yes, and then the other thing we want to talk about tonight is what we can do in the short term. We had gotten your ideas at the last meeting about what people would be willing to do and what's something we can get set up in the near term, which probably is going to involve some different sites around town where people would actually bring their food waste to. We understand that's not a permanent solution, but will help with that feeling so many of us are having where it's just really upsetting to take something that's not trash and feel like you have to put it in the trash. And ultimately what we're working towards is to have a system where it will be part of your regular municipal services. In order for that to work, you all, this is our core group of people. You are the influence setters on this, and we really are going to need you to feel like this is your program, and that you're working side by side with all of us in terms of working out the kinks in the system as we move forward, giving us feedback about what's working, what's not working, because ultimately we want to have a program where it's really easy, that people don't have to work so hard to be in it, and that it's actually easier and feels better to be in the program than to not be in the program. So that's where we're working towards. I know this has been, like I said, a really difficult period. It's been heartbreaking, I have to say, for me personally. But again, this is a temporary pause. Sometimes when you have a setback, it helps to really take a step back. We've tried to use this period to really take a step back and to say, what are we really trying to accomplish here? How can we do it better? How can we do it in a more sustainable way? And how can we make sure that Princeton is dealing with our food waste in a way that's truly responsible? And I do think that there's an environmental justice element to that, where we're taking our waste and sending it somewhere else. If there's some way for us to deal with it here locally and to use the result locally, that is really, in my opinion, the best of all possible worlds. It will be cheaper, it'll be more sustainable, and it will, again, make us better citizens in our larger region to not be burdening some other community with our waste. So with that, I'm going to turn it over. Oh, no, I'm not done. Oh, right, sorry. We want to hear from you all about what this experience has been like during this hiatus. I shared some of my feelings, but we do want to hear from you about just if you've had any insights, having been in the program and then having not been in the program, what that's been like. Does anybody want to? Yeah. Yeah, Liz?
Painful to see my
Right.
and feel so hopeless.
Yeah. Has anybody else been doing anything else with their food waste? Has anybody started a compost pile that didn't have one before? And how's that been going? Oh.
We've had a compost pile for maybe a decade or something, and we basically put on all food waste except bones and fat and meat.
Right.
And so we actually only have about this much stuff that would be not suitable for wine on that, but just too old.
Right. So I don't know if people heard that, but you can put certain things in your backyard composter, but not everything. So there's still that piece that you can't put there in the back. So that's become your default composter, I guess. Yeah.
It's a good reminder that you can compost, 60 to 70% of what you put in your green bin in your backyard is growing in your leaf pile. So
Right.
knowing that it can stay local is better than having to move.
Yeah, Ross?
Coffee grinds are good for my herb garden.
Excellent.
So,
Yes, I think.
I'm reusing my green bin to hold my brown leaves and everything that I'm mixing in my new compost pile that I had kind of gone away from while we had this program. So really use for your green bin.
Right. Yes.
I'm actually an interested Lawrence resident, and we still have the program, and I'm sharing it with a number of others. But it makes me wonder, I've been wondering, hearing about this, where ours is going.
Yeah, I would push to get that information because we were using the same hauler, and that was one of our frustrations, was not getting that information consistently about where it was going, especially because it's an extra cost that you want to make sure that you're getting what you're paying for. Yes.
We estimated that over half of our household outflow was going to the compost program. So then, since it ended, therefore, we have more than double our household output to the landfill. So we sorely need the compost program.
hopefully we have a solution.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that, and I'm going to turn it over to Matt now.
Thanks. Thank you, Mayor. So hi, I'm Matt Wasserman. Hopefully most of you know me. I'm board president of Sustainable Princeton. Before I get started on the agenda, just one other quick announcement. We were talking about what folks are doing at your home. If you don't already know about the event on Saturday morning at Mountain Lakes House, if you want to know all about the different things that you can do at your home for composting, there'll be live chickens and worms, and there'll be demonstrations and a big discussion at Mountain Lake House at 10 a.m. I think 10 to 11:30. So please come join to learn more about that as well. I can tell you personally, one of the things that I've found for myself, is that since this program has stopped, I notice now much more what I'm throwing away, and I will spend a little bit more time asking myself, should I throw this away now, or should I just try to make one more set of leftovers, or do one more thing with this? And it is actually interesting how that kind of has impacted me. So anyway, tonight, again, appreciate all of you guys coming out. We hope we have some good news for you guys. Myself, Bob Huff, will be kind of walking you through the next 10 slides or so, and then we're going to kind of open this up for Q&A and a broader discussion. What we really wanted to do is kind of come back with learnings to date. We promised you a couple months ago that we were not going to come back and tell you this is what's going to happen going forward, that we wanted to come back and actually tell you what we've learned and what some of our options are. We really do want to hear your feedback on some of these things. I think some may feel like they're a more obvious answer than others, but again, it was not about bringing forth the option. It was about or the answer. It was about options, and that's what we're here to kind of present today. We'll talk about hauling, the site, processing, some potential partners, then again, Q&A discussion and some next steps. So with that, Bob, you want to start with the first couple?
Thanks, Matt.
All right, yep.
Good evening, everyone. As long as we're doing quick commercials, I will just let everyone know, if your trash today didn't get picked up and you are in the area bounded by 206, Cherry Valley, and Cherry Hill, Central Jersey had mechanical problems. I just have heard from them. They have stopped collecting since it's after 7 o'clock. They will pick those areas up. So if you're in that sort of triangle in the township, in the municipality, that did not get collected, leave your stuff out. They're coming there first thing tomorrow to pick it up. But they did cease operations about 15 minutes ago of collecting. And we have been harping on them to get us this type of information, and they finally did it. It's sort of interesting that tonight's the night they do it. Maybe they know we're sitting here talking about this. One of the things that I have looked at and that we have had some discussions about is the hauling of the material. And I believe at this point in time that the municipality will probably go in the direction of collecting the organics and doing the curbside organic program by collecting it ourselves. We are, I would say, about 99% sure at this point that is the way to go. We have looked at it. We have actually, gentleman mentioned Lawrence, we have talked with our neighbors in Lawrence about this also, because this is something that they're struggling with too, not just with this, but with other collections. But we're pretty certain that we're going to collect the material ourselves, to the point that I can tell you that in the capital budget that was introduced last week, we made some last-minute adjustments, myself and the administrator, and put money in the capital budget, moved a few things around, deferred a few things within my department so that we can purchase our own truck this year and also do improvements out at River Road, which we believe we will need to make some improvements out there. So that is one of the steps of showing the commitment that we have at this point, is that we've adjusted the capital budget to put money aside for some of the things that will be necessary to do the program, picking up the waste ourselves. One of the things that we're looking at doing is it'll probably be in zones, probably not 4 zones. My guess right now is we will collect a municipality on 2 different days, split it up. Not sure how, but I know previously I've mentioned, half the one side of Witherspoon to the west of Witherspoon and to the east of Witherspoon, sort of as a natural dividing line for this exercise for collecting. So I think that may be something that we would look at, but pretty sure that we will collect on 2 days in order to have greater control, know where we are, get everything collected on the given day that it's supposed to get collected. I will tell you that we have discussed this at our Public Works Committee for many months now, and the members of the Public Works Committee are very much in favor of this plan and of what we propose to do. As far as I mentioned River Road, as far as our site, right now we are looking at literally bringing this in-house. The River Road site, which is the former, well, still is the Sewer Operating Committee site, but where the Sewer Operating Committee's wastewater treatment plant was for decades prior to the Stony Brook Regional Sewage Authority being built in the 70s. We have a site and we have an area out there circled, the red circle there right now. It's sort of the graveyard where dead vehicles go until they're auctioned. That's what you see in the picture there, and other materials that we store, vehicles, but and equipment. But at this point, it looks like we are going to utilize that area. That used to be part of the old sewage treatment plant. It was part of one of the processes. It's got a 2-foot thick concrete floor that you see everything parked on there, some walls. It is an area where we can put up sort of I'm going to call it a tent for lack of a better term at this point, but one of those covers that we can use to work underneath to do this program. And we can put our equipment that we would need for this, bring the material out there and process it. We'll talk about process in a minute, but bring everything out there and operate it. We are in the process of trying to arrange another meeting with the state and have talked to them about this site. They like this because it keeps it in-house, so to speak, keeps it within our municipal boundaries, though because this material is considered a recyclable and not trash, it is easy for us to transport it. We can, another reason why we would collect it, we can transport this because they looked at it as a recyclable material, obviously, as opposed to trash. So this looks like it's a win-win. It would be a great reutilization of this particular site. And, you know, we have looked at some other backup sites, possibly something in Hopewell, but I think at this point in time, when we restart the program, it looks like we will use, like I said, hauling, picking it up ourselves, and we'll use our existing River Road property for the processing. Matt? This is the good part.
All right, so since last we talked, one of the things that kind of came our way here in town was we were approached by the folks at MetLife Stadium. If you're a Giants or a Jets fan, you know where that is. But they had this composter, this biodigester that you can see up there on the screen. And they used it for a few years up until the year at which they hosted the Super Bowl. After that, the management team changed over there, and the new president decided this was not something that he wanted on the site. And so they mothballed it. They put it over in the local lot, and it's been sitting there for a couple of years now, waiting to be used. They approached us and said, "Hey, we hear you guys in Princeton are actually looking to do something with your own type of composting. Are you interested in this?" And kind of the last couple of months have been sitting down and talking to them about exactly this, about getting this composter, this grinder, the mixer that you see on the left, as well as the conveyor that's up there. I've actually brought a sample of the compost, which is back on the table as you guys walk out. It's some really nice looking compost, by the way. And what they used was essentially everything you'd find at a stadium, all the excess hot dogs and French fries and beer and cardboard and all that stuff that was at the stadium is what they threw in this thing. They actually ran a test. I just think this is funny, so I'm going to tell you. They ran a test because they were a little uncertain just how good this would be at kind of mixing everything up. And so the operations director filled a 96-gallon tote full of tomato soup and threw in threw the tomato soup along with a bunch of cardboard in that blue mixer up there in the top on the top. Let it grind for about a half an hour, and then conveyed it all nice and easy into that composter. And 6 days later, it came out as what you see there on the bottom. So they've got some good experience with it. They ran some tests with compostable bags and compostable silverware and things like that, which we're trying to get all those test results. But things definitely look positive in terms of what we could actually do with this. Its size is, it says 18 cubic yards, about 9 to 10 tons. What does that mean for us? It means something that's probably 20 to 30% bigger than our current the current 1,000 users today. So not something that we could scale up to the entire town just yet, but something that could definitely take on the existing program, even get a little bit bigger, which is actually perfect as we try to figure this out, right? We don't want to try to figure this out with 7,000 homes. Much rather figure this out with 1,000 folks who have been in this program, who know how to do this program, who are interested in this program, and with the ability to scale it up a little bit over time to see what happens. Just as we're doing our due diligence, kind of a couple of things are going on over the next couple of weeks. Brome is going to do an assessment of the unit itself to make sure that we're not buying something that actually will break down in 2 months and cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars to fix. And likewise, they're actually going to come down and take a look at the River Road facility as well to make sure that to help us kind of think about what the design might look like as we start to put this thing together. So all of that's kind of happening over these next couple of weeks, so that we can kind of move forward with this in short order, provided everything works out financially and legally and all that kind of good stuff. We've also, so that's one big piece. That's the thing that's kind of fallen into our lap. As part of the research piece, we've also done a few other things. We had been talking to Rocket Composters. So they have a unit up about an hour north at BASF's facility. So we went up and saw theirs. This is a quote for something that they would have built for us. And this, as you can see, this is a $650,000 piece of equipment. So this is, although interesting and probably could do a great job, we just really weren't interested in trying to find a solution for, $650,000 and probably $1 million when you've probably had everything in. But it was just good for us to know kind of what are our options out there. You'll also notice this is you may not be able to see, it's a dual screw auger type composter. So it's very different than just kind of the tin can that turns, which was the other one. But it's not to say that one necessarily makes better compost than the other. It's just a different type of technology, and there are various types of technologies out there. We've also really had some great discussions and feedback from kind of local farms and potential partners. The folks at Cherry Valley Cooperative, were talking to us, have been talking to us about doing kind of windrow composting with chickens. So if you've ever been up to the Vermont Composting Company, or if you've ever looked online on YouTube, actually as food waste comes in, they let the chickens kind of go at it. The chickens, feed on it, they do their thing, and then kind of the result all kind of gets thrown into windrows. So that that's something that a lot of that some farms use. There's also just straight windrowing, where you just take the food waste, you mix it with some type of bulking agent, and you put it in these long windrows that are on the left-hand side for 6 months. So all of these, some of these are cheaper than others. Some of these are, more or less, are more or less logistically, difficult. And some of them have, obviously with something like this, where you've got, you just need 6 months worth of storage for food waste. It requires more room. So we're trying to do that balance of cost, of space that we've got, of resources that we need to try to figure out what is, what's that right solution. So, I mentioned Cherry Brook, Double Brook Farm in Hopewell also has, talked to us about, and helping out. And if anyone was at Community University yesterday, the food waste that we collected there under any of those 5 tents went out to Double Brook. So at least we were, had a place that the food waste could go to. Some of you may have heard of the Bokashi Method, which was a method that a startup in Hopewell called AgriArc was looking at. This basically, if you think about pickles fermenting, this is kind of something you also can do with food waste. You take the resultant liquid, and it actually becomes a compost tea that can be sprayed on to farms, to crops, and then the resultant kind of solids can then be mixed and turned into compost as well, or fed to worms to create vermicompost. So that's something else that we're looking at, as well. They're currently not operational, but one of the things when we were looking at this from a Bloomberg perspective, those of you who remember the Bloomberg project last year, our intent was to look at multiple processes. And so knowing that as we go from 1,000 people to 1,200 people to 13 to maybe up to 7,000, knowing that there are different solutions out there and maybe testing them along the way actually could be helpful to us and ultimately helpful to the rest of the country, because, for whatever reason, everyone's got different land, that's availability, different budgets, et cetera. So having different solutions will be helpful. The next slide, I think Bob and I are going to tag team a little bit on, but this is a toter option. This is the mayor had talked about potentially a short-term option. So this is, this might look familiar, might look like something you see in a parking lot here behind some of the buildings, in downtown Princeton. This one's a little special. It's leak-proof. It's pet-proof, or not pet-proof. It's animal-proof, pest-proof. I hope you're not putting your pets in this. And it also has on top a separate opening for buckets. So this could be a solution in the short term where we say, let's station these kind of 4 or 5 places around town. We will put a volunteer there a couple hours, a few times a week, so that as someone comes up to kind of dump a bucket worth of food waste, we at least find out, okay, make sure it's just food. Maybe give them a 3-question quiz to make sure that they're kind of learning, what needs to be done as part of this program. But it does allow folks who are just, like many of us who are just really depressed about what we're doing with our food waste right now, an option to actually take this somewhere in the short term. And again, we've got some local farms who've told us, yeah, they'd be happy to take this, in the short term as a potential option. You want to talk a
You
little bit
should
about
mention-
this?
I mean, part of this idea came out of the last meeting, when we had the papers around and people were putting up ideas. And this was an idea that a lot of people suggested, would there be a place to, to be able to take it? And we've also had a number of residents throughout the community have come to us even prior to our discontinuing the program and asking about this. For example, Avalon has asked about putting something near them so that people in Avalon who want to participate could go there. There are many people who live in multifamily dwellings or in apartments where, as homeowners associations, whatever, they don't want the bins, they don't want that out on the property. So we've had a number of people have asked us for sort of community drop-off points. So as we've thought about those ideas and then heard about it at the last meeting, we thought we looked into it more and more and can find, these containers that they lock, and we could go through a process where people then would ultimately we would get to beyond having somebody to be there and to get to an honor system where people would come and would hopefully put the right stuff in the container and not contaminate it. And quite honestly, one of the things that we've thought about is controlling it to the point of, okay, 10 or 20, whatever number of people are using this. So if it's contaminated, we know it's coming from one of the 20 people that's using it. So, and then we'll go back to having to make you come and have a volunteer there to put stuff in it. So we do think that we can control this pretty well. And as Matt said, we do have some places that would be interested in receiving this. This is something that if we get the people to help us, we could possibly get started, as soon as we get these containers, maybe in a month or two, sometime early summer. So we would just need to come up with some locations to put this on some municipal sites. We've got a few things in mind and try to get the program started this way.
So show of hands, who might use this? All right.
Good answer.
Excellent. Okay. Fantastic. Show of hands, would anybody be willing to volunteer in a couple hours? Oh, all right. I didn't finish the sentence. Excellent. Fantastic. All right.
Have you considered some kind of like a money system? If you pay, then you're not going to want to contaminate it and have that incentive to, I don't know.
We hadn't, but it's a good idea, and I will, it's definitely something, yes.
What can you put in? Just food waste, no phones, no tap, what can you put in?
So to be determined, but at the very least, it would be all food, and and if we could get it to be food plus napkins plus pizza boxes, that would be great. But it's going to depend upon ultimately kind of that the farm that that we partner with. But and because there's be a lock on top, as we said, if you pass this 10-question quiz, we'll give you the combination to the lock, and then you don't have to have somebody there to to put it in. And actually, I was at a conference a couple of months ago, and I don't remember if it was in Brooklyn or it was some other part of the country that was actually very successful that way, having that quiz. Yes. Uh-huh. No, it was. I mean, but what? So there's a couple pieces to that, and so it's a great question. Let me answer that one, and let me then finish the presentation, and we'll get back to all the Q's and A's. But do you have an answer to that question? Yes, so we were calling that passerby contamination, and it was actually something that we
I wonder that when we get out of the curbside collection, whether maybe there should be a system where we can lock it somehow and
excellent suggestions, and I know that we are looking at different solutions for some of that. Bob?
Well, two things. One, yes, over the summer when we were working on the Bloomberg project, one of the things that we noticed is that if people will use bungee cords to keep down their lid, people are lazy. They will not open your container and they will not take the bungee cord off and put stuff in it. And if you didn't have anything on your lid, you were fair game. So truly happened. The other thing is by bringing the program in-house and collecting it in-house, the people on the back end of the truck, so to speak, will take that time to, when they open it up and see that what looks like it's contaminated and there's recycling or whatnot in it, and reject it. One of the problems we were having with Central Jersey is they're getting paid to pick it up. They were not going to poke around in it. They were not going to take the risk of glass or anything like that. They were picking it up and throwing it out, where when we've talked about it with the Public Works Committee and Council, with our own people, part of that process is to look in the container, oh, sorry, filled with what shouldn't be in there, close it up, put a note on it, reject it, and move on to the next house.
And then some of these new trucks these days, some of the really high-cost ones, in that kind of area there where you see the bin being dumped, they actually put cameras, and that truck is Wi-Fi and GPS enabled, so you can actually see what's actually falling out of that trash can. And it's not that we're necessarily going to go buy the $400,000 truck, because I know that's not what we put in the capital budget, but it's not to say that we can't rig any truck that we do buy with, essentially small cameras and GPS to be able to essentially do some of the same stuff. So there are some ways, I think, that we can address this. David?
I don't know if you were going to get back to this, but I think two other common sources of contamination. One was green plastic bags that you get from the grocery store with your produce, and people think, oh, it's green, it must be compostable. Not all green plastic bags are compostable.
Right.
So that was a major source. And another thing was that it was a little bit of a moving target. Some of our final destinations would accept like cornstarch utensils, other ones wouldn't.
Right.
So people were putting in stuff that really should have been compostable, but week to week, they weren't actually compostable. So getting compliance on those things was an issue.
And so one of the things that we learned from Bloomberg was that we cannot start this program back up without the right type of education campaign, right? 100%, I think we all agree with that. We've lived through some of the worst of it, and I think that we've, are ready. We're going to take those learnings and make sure that it's applied as we start this stuff back up. So let me get back to the last couple slides, and then we're going to we'll get back to all these great questions. Some possible partners here. So we've, Sustainable Princeton has got, been a long-time advocate of this program, and hopefully will continue to do so, either from an advocacy or an education perspective. Princeton University helped us a lot in Bloomberg in terms of behavioral science, and no reason why they might not be able to continue to do that. Also, just they've got a composter of their own. I see Gina here, today in the audience. So obviously, I'm sure we'll share learnings, one way or the other. And then it's not just Cherry Valley Cooperative, but again, there's a number of farms out there who are willing to kind of be part of this and to help us educate and to help kind of create. The discussion's been, how do we create the right relationship between residents and their food waste? And so trying to kind of figure that one out and working on that one, I think will be a big part of this, big part of this process as well. Let's hold off on this one, but something to think about. How would you market this new program, right? If you think about now, we're going to have our own truck. We're going to put aside money for marketing. What are some of the things that you would think about in order to be able to kind of market this well? So something to think about. All right, let's kind of finish this up and get to Q&A. So kind of some next steps. Take feedback. Oh yeah, we're going to take your feedback. That's the first thing we're going to do. So through the Q&A, now, and any feedback that you want to give us, either today or in an email to us afterwards, we want to take. We want to gather all. We're already starting to gather all the potential costs. We're talking, to the manufacturers of equipment, We're talking to the administrators here in town. So doing all that work, looking at the funding models. How are we going to pay for all this? There's a number of models. We could start, another 501c3 and accept donations to do this. This could be through participation fees, starting up an LLC, and doing a private-public partnership. Money from the municipal budget that we were using, in the last, go around as well. And we are, and with all this, we're utilizing CFAC, or the Citizens Finance Advisory Committee, and to kind of help us kind of look at those numbers and figure out what's the best way to do this. If you remember that executive slide, what we'd love to be able to do is make this free for everybody at some point. It's not going to happen at startup, but with a high cost of landfill today, with the kind of diversion rates we could potentially get, there's got to be a way to get the cost of this way, way, way down, and that's the goal. So we've got to meet with town officials, council, lawyers, the mayor, et cetera, to kind of figure out what is that final what's this going to ultimately look like. And then ultimately, we'd love to be making a decision in the next couple of months about, where to be writing checks to, and what's the future of this going to actually look like. And then the last item, I forgot that I mentioned it earlier, but please do come on Saturday to Mountain Lakes for the Food Waste Solutions panel as well. So, Bob, did I miss anything? Oh, some of the questions, some of the other questions to think about as we get into Q&A and comments. What's the right cost structure for HOAs, right? So today, there's a different, if you own a home, you pay, property taxes, and you pay for garbage in your property taxes. If you're an HOA, or in certain HOAs, Avalon, et cetera, that isn't necessarily the case. So, is there a difference in how, costs need to be structured? And, this came up last time. I made an assumption last time. I said, no one here is going to be willing to spend $300 a year to have their food waste picked up. And, someone called me on it over there on the side, said, don't make that statement. I would pay it. And so, so think about, how much would you pay for it? Especially in the beginning, right? Because the beginning is always the hardest, when you are less efficient than you're ultimately going to be, when costs are, when things come up that you're not expecting. But what is that cost that you'd pay, in that first year to get this thing started back up again? So with that, Bob, is there anything else before we kind of take Q&A that you wanted to touch on?
I think the only thing was just back to the MetLife digester. One of the reasons this is very attractive to us is that the folks up there are looking to gift this. So when you look at that sheet and you look at the other one that says $650,000 on it, it does make it interesting for a try. And like I said, Matt said they're evaluating it to give us assurance that it's in good working order. They originally started out talking about a transportation cost to us, and each time we talk to them, that transportation cost seems to be going down. So, there will be some cost associated with it, but it just seems to Matt and I, right, unless we're missing something really big here, it seems like a really good idea to get ourselves back started, to take them up on it. And for some reason, I think there's a few people in that program up there that want to give it to somebody and have the good PR of giving it to a community to do it, so that they can throw it back up at the management, I think, that they did something good with this. It is, what did it take us? Like 7 or 8 minutes to ride out to it. Those of you who are familiar with the Meadowlands, this thing is as far away from the stadium as they could possibly put it, because, quote, it smelled. So, it's out there, and it's for the taking, and it's really, potentially a very exciting opportunity for us.
Yeah, we were actually wondering if anyone was ever going to see us again. They took us so far out.
We just kept going and going and going. It's like, are we even in Jersey still?
We're in a truck by waste management professionals being dragged out to somewhere in the Meadowlands. Like, uh-oh.
We were past their snow removal equipment. We were just...
And we were just told a story that they had lost a couple of trucks the night before.
Out there.
So, yeah, it was an interesting. ordeal. So anyway, now it is time for Q&A and or comments. So please, Jeanette.
So, two questions. So I've talked about participation fees and fees now maybe voters. Are you taking into account how the affordable housing population and it might not be financially possible for many members of our community to participate in something that's like the environmental
Right.
and civic responsibility of all our citizens, and it's a little bit pay to play, and this is just sort of the right thing to do for our entire town and for environmental reasons. With multiple dwelling units and affordable housing, lunch families that shouldn't be penalized or not being able to participate in this program, and maybe they can't afford it.
It's a great question. Actually, when we're having a discussion about the toters as kind of a temporary option, it actually then kind of became a discussion about maybe this is actually a long-term solution for parts of the community where, if this is a $60 a year, kind of residential pickup program, maybe this is a free program as a toter in certain neighborhoods. So absolutely.
And then, just as a follow-up, I know you want to start small because of the capacity of this hopefully pretty different from Empire Stadium. But is there any talk of long-term goals of getting our restaurants and public schools and everywhere else that generate huge amounts of food waste to compost, either voluntarily or maybe not voluntarily?
Absolutely. In fact, one of the discussion items is, once we've got the kind of residential program, figured out with these, existing 1,000 or 1,100 residents, do you bump it up to 1,300 or 1,400 residents, or do you then actually move over to restaurants and say, let's now figure out restaurants first and do some of them at a pilot program, and then when we eventually get bigger, it's bigger across the town. So absolutely 100% it's on the table. Yeah. Stephanie, I think I saw your hand up a couple times. Oh. She could be Stephanie.
I'd be willing to pay more than we were paying, and it's sort of, it's kind of a sliding scale. I can only recycle my vegetables at 1 p.m.
It's a great point.
Pizza boxes and meat and plant material like we originally had on the list. I'd be willing to pay a lot more. So just somebody might want to.
It's a great point. I hadn't thought about that. Stephanie? Okay, I'm sorry. So those folks who could not hear her point, what she said was, yes, she'd be willing to spend more than what the current program is asking in terms of cost to participate, but it would be on a sliding scale. So if all you could compost was vegetables, she'd be willing to spend this much. But if it was vegetables and meat and bones and pizza boxes and compostable cutlery, that's a different cost that she'd be willing to spend. So it's a point we hadn't thought about. That's great. Thank you. Stephanie.
I second the idea of making sure that we can go up to including the public schools first and foremost, because the children live as residents in their houses and they go to school, and it's very easy for kids to be throwing away different things in different places, and they spend a lot of time at home and a lot of time at school. So businesses as well, universities,
Yep.
everyone's looking for the same solution. So the sooner we can all work together, better this would be. Mercer County, Lawrence and doing the dumping program too, so what they do with their stuff, and I'll be working with them. It is very important for us to be able to scale up, I think, rather quickly to a whole town, even at 1,000 members for more than 5 or 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
The biodigester that we're getting from Red Light, potentially, Yankee Stadium also composts. They've been composting for at least 6 or 7 years. What do they use, and what would the plan be that you could buy more of the Red Light one
Mm-hmm.
to scale up? Almost done. We asked Avalon Bay a long time ago to include composting, and it's great now that they should, but they certainly should pay for it.
Yeah. Right. Well, yeah, which was the same issue we had. Yeah, no, all excellent points.
I want to clarify, we are talking only now about food waste, because the old days we could put in weeds, lawn waste, anything in the group, anything,
So I'm using the word food waste at the moment very generically, in a general sense. So it could very well be food and paper goods and lawn waste and all. I think what has to happen is over these next few months we need to kind of figure out, what is that right? What do they recommend as a manufacturer? And then ultimately over time, how does that play out day to day, right? I mean, because one of the things that MetLife had for them is that generally, week to week, the same stuff is going through their digester, the same number of hot dogs and French fries and things like that. Whereas here, depending upon the season, you're going to get, 4,000 turkey carcasses, and then, 14 tons of weeds and, all that kind of stuff. So that's just something that we're going to have to learn our way through. Obviously, the solution that we'd be going for is to allow for all of that. And so at the moment it's TBD, but we would like it to be everything. Yes?
I want to thank everybody who's been involved in doing this, and certainly Liz Lempert for pushing this, and to congratulate you all. It's a fantastic example of think globally and act globally. So I'm very excited for this program.
Thank you.
I am particularly interested in the compliance aspect. I'm very delighted when Paul was saying what kind of things envision for the long-term truck around town program. The thing will live or die on compliance.
Yep.
And the simple process that we talked about, I think, may be the best. That is look in, stick an adhesive label on, and the word of the lady is obviously going to get fork out and so forth. But what of educating?
Right.
I've really felt strongly about this with regard to something that's not within this purview, that is the county recycling program. And maybe we could show how to do it at this level, this program, and somehow then move on to the county and start educating them, because the plastic and newspaper and everything else recycling is hugely more.
Right. It's a great point.
Getting rid of plastic containers that I get from McCaffrey's. I have a secret dumpster that I get that takes 1 to 7 number plastic.
Yeah, right. All right. So actually, you sparked a question that I need to ask folks. So if you weren't allowed to use those compostable bags anymore, how much of an issue is that? Who would still be part of the program if you couldn't use those? Who would not want to be in the program anymore? Let me ask you different. Who would not want to be in the program anymore if you couldn't use? Well, so that's the reaction I'm looking for, right? Right. Uh-huh. Right.
but you do take brown paper bags.
Correct.
So you can either pay the $7 for like 3 bags or 7 bags or whatever, or you can buy 100 or 200 paper bags, like
Right.
lunch bags. They cost $1.99.
Right. So all right. So you think about kind of unintended consequences and kind of to decisions you make. So if one of the decisions you make is the only way to make this work is to have 99.99% compliance, it's really hard to do that when you're collecting is all in this tied up green plastic bag. So just kind of think about that for a moment, and it's why I asked the question I did. And it's not to say that that's the way we're going, but it is something we have to figure out. And it is why some of these facilities up front, have a crushing machine to try to break those bags up, and so that ultimately before you actually get into the process, or at least before it ultimately gets onto a farm, you're able to kind of sift that stuff out. So just something to kind of think about, Mayor.
I have a question. So when we were doing the Bluebird project, as part of that, we were doing these crash audits.
Correct.
We were ripping
And so I think we had different theories as to where the contamination was coming from. And again, like going in-house could, I mean, if you're using a dirty truck,
Mm-hmm.
then maybe that was part of the source of the contamination. I don't know if we actually fully understand
Oh, we don't.
where it's coming from. And I mean, I think everybody in this room wants to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we did hear sometimes within the household there'd be people misbehaving.
Right.
So you'd have one person sign up and other people misbehaving in the house.
Right.
Or the person walking down the street with the passerby contamination. And then we also had suspicions about a dirty truck too.
Right.
So, you know, I think that's something where we're going to have to keep looking at where is it really coming from.
No question at all. It was just, it's one of those things that just want to kind of take the temperature in the room. Yes, go ahead.
Back in the envelope, what percentage of our current capacity would the biodigester already be utilizing? Relative to our current annual fee, for this to be, I'm assuming you make it self-sustaining, what would the price have to be? Even with my fares?
Right. So the question was about the capacity of the. Right. We'd be probably somewhere in the 2/3 to 3/4 capacity.
So,
So there's kind of two pieces there. You have a little bit more within the existing equipment that you saw up here. The nice thing about this piece of equipment, it's so simple that it actually, to get 33% more capacity on that, they literally attach a longer tin can to the back end of it, right? Because that's what that thing looks like, versus having to go buy another big double auger. So it can grow with us over time, yeah. And then the bare piece, I'm going to leave that up to you there.
the ultimate goal is that, I think we've talked in terms of 2 to 3 years, you know, if we can make this work properly, of the price gradually going down. Ultimately, we'd like it to pay for itself. Some of that is what is the value at the end product. If the end product's good and you can sell it, it goes back towards reducing all of our costs. So when we talk about what's the input, you know, streamlining the input has a great impact on what the output is and what uses. At MetLife, you know, there was a lot of hot dogs, hot dog rolls, French fries, some cardboard, and some other things, and they used the material around the complex, and also had some buyers for it, as I recall,
Yeah.
because it was so good. They liked it. It was clean. There wasn't any plastic, anything in it, so they had a very good use for it. So ultimately, we would like to see this program work to the point where it pays for itself and that there is no cost. But that's going to take a couple of years to do. That will not be right off the bat. As far as animals, we have animals now. So I think the issue becomes how much we decide we need to secure that particular area with fencing or whatever to keep animals out. But I'll just answer your question by saying I have an animal problem now.
So I've visited one of the compost facilities in this, where it was in the region, and you know, they haul all the compost into the area and with trucks and then process it and put it into big rows, I guess, also. And you know, I don't really care about odor that much, and I usually tell people that odor is not an issue with compost, but it was an issue. There, not that it matters to me, as I said, but, so the question is, at River Road, you didn't really, I mean, they had all kinds of things sucking the air down through this big filter, and we have earth, so, you didn't describe any of that at River Road, just a, you know, concrete pad. So do you expect odor to be an issue there?
I'm glad we're next to a sewage treatment plant.
Yeah. Well, one of the issues with going. Sorry, go
We
ahead.
are aware of it. We've talked to MetLife a little bit about it. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that there weren't odors, but I can also tell you that one of the things their comments back to us were it was a perception. This thing was there, so it stunk among some of the people there, but I'm not going to tell you this won't have odors. We are aware of it. We're trying to figure out, that's another part of the piece of the puzzle. You know, it's the old, I don't want it in my backyard. Boy, wouldn't it be great to send it to Iowa or somewhere else and let them worry about it. But no, we're going to deal with it. Yeah, it's ours. We're going to figure it out. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And windrow-only solutions tend to be can be smellier because you're dealing with raw food waste for a longer period of time, whereas the stuff that's going to come out of this biodigester will already be mostly composted.
I'm talking about the stuff coming from the trucks, just before they start.
Oh, got it.
In the building,
Mm.
you know, they keep the doors closed and all their processes.
Well, yeah. Well, that's something we're going to probably have to learn. We'll learn our way through. So.
Yeah, so we moved here from a community in England that had organic waste curbside collection for the whole town. It was just part of your municipal service. No one ever used compostable bags.
Mhm.
Maybe at that time, this was at least 15 years ago, they weren't so widespread. But
Right.
it was never an issue. We've never used them ever. But one thing that they did offer was that you could, if you didn't use, you could have your green bin disinfected once a year. So if you were worried that it was going to get too smelly and gross, there was a service that would come around and just clean it out for you. And that actually addressed a lot of the issues. And I think if you didn't have people using any bags, then you wouldn't have those problems of people getting confused about which bags they were using.
Right.
They're green, they look green, but they're not green. And the other thing I was wondering about was, I don't understand why it's not more possible to partner with the university's biodigesting system. I'm a faculty member. I reached out to Shauna Weber. I'm sure you've been speaking to her. She said there was something about the license that the university has doesn't allow them to accept anything.
Well, Gina's there.
But I found it kind of confusing that the university is trying to do this, the town is trying to do this. Why can't it be a single enterprise that everyone would do together?
Well, I know that their facility isn't big enough, right? You manage, I think, one cafeteria or one. Right, and so it's not even large enough to even handle, right? But I mean, I think from a learnings perspective, I mean, the intent would absolutely be to learn from each other. But I don't know if there's anything else you want to. Gina, could you stand up? Sorry, because it's just hard.
Gina, I know that Composter at the university is a pilot scale project, so we're only accepting 1/6 of what the university recovers in terms of its food waste. And also with the permitting, it would have required an extra permit to accept food waste from outside of the university boundaries. Another thing in terms of the bags, so food waste that we receive come in 32-gallon totes or 5-gallon bins, and we don't use bags. We wash containers every day, and it's actually a pretty easy process because we have to walk around that day and just cleaning it out so we can only keep. So that's one thing to consider, but also makes you guys have to look into having correct sanitation grades and resources at your site to be able to clean out the bins. But yeah, as I said, we're trying to limit our use of plastic bags or just compostable bags.
Right.
Give a closing opinion on that. If you want large-scale participation, obviously everybody in this room is passionate about it, so maybe bags aren't an issue. If you want large-scale participation, you need to make it easy. The bags make it easy.
Right.
It's not easy. People aren't going to do it. Period. It's just like with recycling. You don't make it easy. It doesn't get done. So.
It's a great point.
One of the things about odor that I do, or I used to do, is stick it in the freezer until compost day.
Uh,
And then
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to get nasty, and especially in downtown, you know, there are a lot of homes that are like right on top of each other. So I may think the bags are a necessary evil. One man's opinion.
No, I think it's a great point.
So, I just want to say, my department is lucky enough to partnering with, the digester on campus. And so we compost in our office. And so we have a variety of 5 gallon, 5 gallon, whatever, each buckets that GM provides to us. We run a lot of events in our office. And so we have them in the different rooms. We have our events. We tell people now, okay, the compost, you have to spray your whatever, it's buckets, the buckets are online. So they're there all week on Friday after 2:30. I take them downstairs to the building. I leave them there. Sometimes I consolidate them. I take 5 minutes. A little dish soap in, in a pitcher. I pour it in the bucket. I scrub it out, and that's it. And I mean, then I have a clean bucket. The buckets I get back from Gina the next week when they're empty, we put them back in and we start to cycle all over again. I will honestly say, my compost home never smells if we don't put it in plastic. We smell a little teeny tiny bit, but I wash them and I just wash the baking soda, so I have the baking soda. So the next, I mean, does it take a little extra time? It's 5 minutes.
Right.
So, and we generate a fair amount of waste in a week, but it's easy and doable, but you do have to want it.
Right. Over here, sorry. Go ahead.
So last year, we still going on in August. Last year in August, if anybody else had this, but my account was totally messed with that. And cleaning that out is really. It was, but I mean, the only place to have the bin near my home is one of the places you have to walk by.
Uh-huh.
So, and that was with plastic, the compostable plastic. So, I agree with what you were saying, sir, that anything you can do to get it is great. I don't think many people are gonna wanna participate in the program where they have access.
Yep, I agree. I think that definitely an issue we're going to have to solve for. Barack.
I just want to build on the point of ease of use and just make sort of a macro point, which is, from my perspective, the goal isn't to have the best compost program of 1,100 households that the world has ever seen. The goal is for us as a community to do our part to help fix the planet and set an example for other communities to adopt those types of that type of thinking. So, from my perspective, I'm dead set opposed to any policies that are any type of impediment to achieving that goal. I think the program should be free. I don't think we should have people, we shouldn't ask people to cart garbage in their cars to various locations around town. And I know this is just a quote unquote, respectfully, an awful sample of the population. Everyone here is here because they're committed and they're educated and are already there. The rest of the community needs to get there. You do that through education, PR, and marketing, and branding, and allocation of resources to a top priority in the community. So this should be super simple, super easy. It should be part of our DNA as quickly as possible. And we should be removing all impediments to make this possible.
Well said. Thank you.
Are we generating greenhouse gases? Yeah, what about?
So no, this is an aerobic process. So you will not be creating methane through this process. I don't have the calculator on me, but there is a carbon calculator that I was using to kind of look at how much methane was being created when this stuff was going to landfill versus when you compost this, and especially when you compost this locally versus sending it, tens or hundreds of miles away in a landfill. I mean, no, it's much better, in the solution we're looking at. Yes. Yes. Correct. Yes. Unfortunately, most anaerobic digesters are very, very expensive. Like if you take a look at who's using them, big universities are using them, bigger cities are using them. These are tens of millions of dollars generally. We're balking at 600 grand. So it's not that it's not a good solution, it's just probably not the right solution for a small town. Eve.
Just in terms of compliance and moving forward in terms of the gentleman who spoke back there who talked about making it easy and involving everybody, I think, and someone else who spoke about heat throw system, which would mean that your compost and your recycling would be free and you pay for the amount of garbage that you generate. I think that's the ultimate long-term solution. I don't know how far we are away from there. And of course, that would involve its own issues of compliance because, it's very easy to put your trash into your recycling so you don't have to pay for it. So that's something that I think I haven't canvassed my colleagues, but I know at least a couple of them are very keen on moving towards this. So I think the composting program will be part of, a solution that involves really, I think, charging for trash and having recycling and compost be free to incentivize people to do the right thing. So I think that's in the future.
Stephanie.
I can't stress enough that we're not the only carbon compost in this country or the world. So cities deal with this, higher products in Canada deal with it, and this is a lot from them. So I really hope that we're reaching out to those places. And everyone might think that I'm very odd, but I've been in the program since it started. I have never cleaned my green bin. I have never used bags, and it's so easy. It sits out with my landfill trash. It doesn't smell. If you open the lid, it might, but my landfill bin also smells and also not nice. So there are two sides to the coin.
Absolutely. Saw someone over here, yeah. Not necessarily. It might be in addition to, especially to the question earlier about are there certain communities where it just makes more sense either from an equity perspective or ease of use perspective. It could be something that stayed longer term. I'm sorry, what was the second? The green bins and. You mean when they stop being useful? Well, hopefully we will continue to use them. Like when we start this back up, we might perhaps we'll re-sticker them or do something to them. But the hope, because I think they're $40 or $50 a piece. The hope would be to reuse them. I'd hate to have to kind of throw those away to start off a program about recycling. That really wouldn't be great, right? That is a potentially, yes, that was one of the things we talked about, yes. Logistically? Bob, you want to talk about
the toters?
The toters?
It would just be with the toters and making arrangements with some local farms that would take the material from us on a short-term basis just to get back into the flow. There's a lot of people who have expressed an interest to my office staff that they'd like something like that.
So you could literally put them on a
That they could
flatbed
do.
and take them somewhere. For the whole town, it would be a whole lot of toters. But won't take it off the table. I think, as with everything else, if we start with 4 or 5, if it's immensely successful and, we decide that's the way the town should go, then the data will bear that out. But, so. Oh, yep.
I'll try to make this the last question. Think ahead, you thought about the whole creation for the biodigesters, like
Yes.
example source of that is either sawdust, right, or wheat or cardboard. I'm sure Amazon would be a problem. There would be shortages around.
With the amount of wood that we pick up on this town, we do not think finding the right bulking agent would be an issue, either between the wood chips. I mean, bringing some of that wood to River Road instead of out to Lawrenceville could be a solution. If you've ever walked around the shopping center, I think on a Tuesday, whenever they collect all the cardboard, there are so many giant toters of cardboard out there. So we believe here in town we have enough bulking agent that we wouldn't have to go outside the town to have the complete package for the biodigester.
On a yearly basis, I have thousands and thousands and thousands, both cubic yards and tons of stuff, brush, stumps. It would be a good use for it.
Sophie?
Just wanted to make the point that, to the extent that people will compost in their own backyards, because obviously not something that everybody can do within their property, then we don't even have to lug all of this around. So I just think that continues to be part of the conversation.
Yes.
Part of educating people, and even if people can probably, compost 60%, they can't put their heat in, but at least trying to keep what you can, something where it's not being run around.
That's a great point, and I was actually surprised during the Bloomberg project while we were talking to people who've been part of the program for years, how many people I came across who still backyard composted. And they're like, yeah, I use the green bin for the meat and the things that I won't put in my backyard, but they still do backyard composting. So, yeah, absolutely. Yes.
I think it's a good point that if you can make a product that you can sell, that's a benefit. But in terms of the comments about participation and accessibility, and making it free and pay to grow, I think it would be better to reframe that around now. Like, the goal is not to have it pay for itself, but to ask, how much does it cost to pay for our trash disposal, recycling, and have those numbers that have been running and maybe shared, like what's the cost per person per year for throwing away trash, for recycling, and composting. Why can't the food waste be the free thing or something that everybody can do if that's what we want to do? And think about reframing it to participation and not we're trying to make it free. It should be paying for itself. It should be just one of our services.
It's a great point. I think that Councilwoman Gang was kind of trying to address some of that as well in her comments, and I don't know if anyone else on council wants to. So, Mayor, is there anything else you want to kind of mention here before we wrap up for the evening, or?
No, first of all, please let's give a round of applause for Matt. And I also want to thank Bob Huff, who's been great. I want to thank everybody here for your commitment. I mean, the reason why Medline called us was because of a resident who was doing some work up there, and I just feel like, I just feel it in this room where we're all invested in this. The path forward, I think, is becoming a little more clear, and it's really exciting, but I can pretty much guarantee there are going to be bumps along the road as we move forward too. And I just want everybody to know we're really committed to making this work. And the fact that people are coming out to these meetings, we know that you're really committed to it too. And it's actually really exciting to be working together on something. I know there are other communities that do this, but I can tell you we've reached out to a lot of them, and a lot of them are having issues also. It seems like it should be simple, but it's not. And it's, other places are looking to us for answers as much as we're looking to them. So it's certainly in the United States, we're now part of a community of a lot of cities and towns that are trying to figure this out. And that's really exciting too, that what we're doing here is going to have an impact not just on our town, but around the country potentially. So again, thank you for your interest and your patience and your willingness to be part of this. And hopefully our next meeting will be even more exciting.
Thank you. On the way out, there's a number of flyers about upcoming events as well as some of the compost from the MetLife Stadium. Please take a look at those and mark your calendars. Thank you.